Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk a bit about painting details with acrylic paint. As you know, acrylic paint, it dries really fast and it can be kind of challenging. So I'm going to give you some tips and show you a bit about how I do it. Here I'm working on a painted portrait of little baby Odin, and during this video you'll watch me paint the details of his cute little jammies. One thing I want to just touch on before I start is you can see in the start of the video here I'm covering my face with a handkerchief. I've been getting headaches from the fumes of the paint as I do paint a lot, and so I just wanted to talk about that a bit and just make sure that everybody out there knows that when you're painting you should make sure that you have an open window, lots of clean air running through the area, and that you have a good ventilation system. And then also you might even want to cover your face and wear gloves while you're painting, just to kind of create a barrier between you and the chemicals of the paint. No matter the quality of your paint, it's all got some sort of chemical makeup to it, and it's just important to protect yourself. I just don't feel like a lot of people talk about that, so I wanted to throw that in there. All right, on to painting details. So the first thing I want to talk about is the red parts that I've painted of his jammies here. Those parts are quite small, and so when you're painting detailed areas that are really, really small, instead of laying a flat color first, I like to just paint it all right in the area. So do all my mixing in the area and all my blending right in that little area, and then move on to another area and kind of not look back type thing. So with the red, I laid down the red color, but then I also added in a bit of black to create some shadows, and the white color right on top, right in the little area, and then I move forward. I didn't lay a flat color first. Now, if you're working on areas that are a bit bigger, like the colors of the color block areas of his pajamas, I like to lay a flat color of the mid-tone. So I look at the section that I'm working in and I pick the mid-tone color, so the color that's in the middle of the color range from light to dark, and then I mix up a bunch of that color and I lay a flat, just straight that color all over that little space. Then you can either work with it wet or dry, it just depends on what kind of look you're going for, but I build up and back from the mid-tones. So I add more black to create darker area, or I add more white to create lighter area, and I mix it all together. I also find sometimes depending on which pigments that you're working with, if you're working with paint, like for example blues or reds tend to have not the best pigment coverage, and they'll be a little bit translucent. So laying down a flat color base first, even if it's a little see-through, that's okay, because you're gonna go back over it with lights and darks and kind of build up from there. It really helps to build up the opacity of the paint as well, so you can't quite see all the way through it. So yeah, I go through different areas of his jammies here. You can see that I lay down a bit of color first, a mid-tone color, and then I add in darks and lights to create tone, up and back. Now I did the same thing with his face and his hands. I laid down a flat color that was in the middle range of his skin tone, and then I went through and added lights and darks, but also I added some peaches and some yellows to give the illusion of his skin tone there. It's really, really important when you're working with acrylic paint to let it either dry completely or work with it right away. If you wait too long, the paint will get kind of tacky, and when you start to add more colors, it'll lift and drag, and it's really quite a mess. So I like to put a lot of paint down when I'm painting as well, so quite globby, and then kind of lift up the paint and take it away, excess paint with my brush. That way I know I have enough paint to cover the surface. A lot of people, when they first start painting with acrylic paint, they don't load up their brush enough and they don't put enough paint down. So they end up getting that dry brush kind of technique where you can kind of looks like scratchy and very dry. And they're wondering why they can't move their paint around. And it's always best to really load up the paint when you're working with acrylic paint. It'll really help to be able to blend well. You obviously don't want too much paint, because if you put too much paint in, you'll create texture to your painting where you'll have bumps and texture to the paint, unless that's what you're going for. For me, I don't like to have that texture to the paint. When my paintings are done, I like them to have this nice flat surface to them that's just a bit shiny. Looks really cool with how the acrylic paint dries, kind of like plastic, so it gets a nice sheen to it, I think. But yeah, so that's kind of how I paint details. I build up and back from the mid-tone, and that's works really well for me, especially with acrylic painted, because it dries so fast. You have your choices of either laying down the mid-tone flat or blending the mid-tone with your lights and darks right away. So yeah, I think it turned out really, really nice. I decided to do pick up some of the violets and blues for the background, just to kind of not take away from his little jammies. And yeah, it worked out really well. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you learned something today. Have a nice day.